All right, what's up guys? Welcome back to the AdTactix training. In this video, we're actually going to be diving into each of the bid formulas in more detail, as well as you can see on my computer screen here, I've got some screenshots. This one in the bottom left is of the actual bid precedence that we talked a little bit about in the quick start training if you're coming over from there. But I just want to really drive home some of the critical points about how the bidding is structured in AdTactix and just try to help explain some of the formula inputs, things like that in this video. So without further ado, we are in the bid override table right now. And again, watch the quick start video for how to first get some targets or campaigns, portfolios. There's a lot of different ways you can set this up. You can essentially structure this however you want, depending on how your account's set up. There's pretty much the possibilities are endless, especially with like portfolio style biddings. You can group different products into a portfolio. You can group different strategies like defensive targeting, branded keywords. There's a lot of different ways you can set this up. For portfolios, you could have the same portfolio name in your sponsored products brands display, and you just literally have a few rows worth of segmented kind of portfolio rows that you set bid settings for. Or you could have a bunch of targets, which I like the kind of combination approach where you've got your main targets that are kind of carrying your account. Usually it's like 20 to 30% of the targets that are doing most of the sales, and get those at the target level. That way you can really be refined and segment out your bid parameters, track everything for those. And then for the rest of them that really aren't doing as much, is you don't spend as much time focused on those, group those, or let this account level row is the simplest way, handle the rest of them. So you can bid more conservatively on the account level stuff and then bid more aggressive on the things that are really working well for you. So again, a lot of different ways you can do it. But what I wanted to talk about in this video is there is 4 different bid formulas right now, and I'm sure we'll be adding more in the future, but you can see the 4 different ones here. The Apex formula is a good all-around, just conservative, kind of middle of the road formula. The revenue per click times target ACoS, and then the revenue per click times your current bid over cost per click. These are a little more aggressive and more subject to bid swings, just because they are more ratio based on the current metrics, and you'll see as you use them and kind of compare them that the bid adjustments are just a wider range on these two. Then the iterative is it's more of the complex one, which I'm going to cover in this video as well, but it's more of it's a non-ratio based bid formula, but it is a kind of fixed bid increment style adjustment. So it can be really useful as well. All right, but what I wanted to talk about first is this bid precedent. So just to really drive this concept home. So as you can see down here, I've got targets. If they're on the bid override table, they're going to take precedence over your campaigns, and then the portfolios, then the ASINs, then your account level. So as you can see, I've got examples of all the different types, and the targets we've got right here, which the way you put the target level overrides on here is you grab column A from either of these sheets. So you can see column A is target override. So you would just grab that value and then you paste the values into this column here, and then you just assign it as a target level override from the drop down there. Similarly, you can paste in the campaign name of a group of targets and you would assign it a campaign. And if you did this, just keep in mind that while the bid input settings here are going to be used, you're also going to use every target within this campaign's individual performance metrics. So it takes the individual target performance metrics in combination with these and runs it through a formula like this to calculate each level's target bid to be optimized. So likewise, portfolios, you can do the same thing. It's just going to be a much bigger group than obviously one campaign. It's going to be multiple campaigns. And then finally, ASINs. So when we're talking about ASINs and assigning bid input settings, it's only for single ASIN structured campaigns. So If you have ASIN A and ASIN B in a campaign, it's not going to be applicable for assigning bid input settings. These are only going to govern when you have your campaign structured in the single ASIN format. All right, and then finally your account level row. Again, this is if no other target overrides, campaign portfolio ASINs, if none of these are on here or none other criteria is met, then it's going to fall back to the account level row. And if for some reason you want to just ignore anything else and you just want to focus on the overrides, you can always delete these inputs here, and your account level row will turn yellow like that. Now everything else except what's got an override is going to be ignored. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is, actually, I'll just leave it like this. I'm going to go through an example, at least on the Apex formula here, for each case in the formula. And the other formulas are very similar. I'll spend more time on the Apex formula, but then I'll touch on the other examples as well. But you can see here I got blue, orange, red, green, and gray. So the blue is the example for blue is a non-converting term. So there's no ACoS, there's no orders, but we do have high clicks. Okay, so our high click threshold right now is set at 10 clicks is the click limit. So just kind of keep that in mind. This next one it's got lower clicks, but it's got high impressions. Okay, so our impression kind of threshold in this example is set at 300. We've got them all set at 300 right now. All right, and this next example is going to be a high ACoS target. So this is 52% ACoS right now, which you can see it's actually greater than our 25% high ACoS threshold. So that's going to be important. All right, and then you have a good performing ACoS, which is 15%. And this is actually lower than our mid ACoS threshold. So that's going to be important. And then lastly, for this fifth example, you've got a 26% ACoS, which if you can see here, I've kind of tweaked the settings so there's a gap between the two. So 25 to 30, and this ACoS actually falls in between. All right, so hopefully this kind of example of all the different cases will help illustrate how these formulas work. Again, all of them operate similarly, but you do have to kind of study them and do some examples to really get the full picture of how the formulas are functioning. So anyway, the bold text down here, so this is a screenshot of the Apex formula, and the bold fields actually correlate to the header fields up here. So you can see where it says max bid, you've got a bold max bid. Low bid, same thing as min bid. High ACoS, you've got a high ACoS. Target ACoS, you've got a target ACoS, so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do is just kind of briefly explain for each of these cases how this formula is working. So for this row right here, our blue number one example, we have high clicks. So you can see that's the first case in this logic. So it's going to say if there's no orders, which there's not any orders, and the clicks are greater than our click limit. So we've got 17 clicks, which are greater than 10 clicks. Then you're going to take the current bid, which in this case is 74 cents, and you're going to decrease it by your decreased bid percentage, which is 10%. So in this case, you're going to take 74 or 0.74 times 0.9, and that's going to give you 0.67. So that's where the bid comes from. All right, this next one, you've got low clicks. So let me click here. Low clicks, but high impressions. Okay, so you can see the first line in the logic is the clicks greater than the click limit? In this case, it's not, because it's 4 and our click limit's 10. So we're going to move on. Does it have 0 orders? Yes. Is the impressions less than the impression limit? All right. In this case, it is actually greater than the impression limit. So my example is kind of bad here. So this is just going to stay the same because you're getting good impressions and it's, doesn't have enough clicks yet, but you're getting impressions. So the bid's staying the same. Now let me get actually an example, see if I've got one here. All right, I'm back. So you can see this case here, the second number 2 orange one, we've got low clicks. So the second line down here, or let's see, our clicks are not greater than our click limit. So we move on. Our impressions are only 65, and that's currently less than the 300 that we have here. All right, so this row here is going to apply. So we're going to take our current bid, which is 20 cents, and you're going to increase it by the impression up bid, which is the step up column. You can see it's only set to 1 cent. I recommend anywhere from like 3 to 5 cents, usually depending on niche. One's a little bit too low, but the idea there is you start out and you kind of work your way up incrementally with each optimization cycle. Anytime you hit this button here, it's going to increment all your targets that fall into that similar criteria where it's got low impressions. It's going to increment up by a fixed amount, and hopefully once it gets to high enough bid, you start getting impressions. That's the idea, so you're not spending as much money at first. All right, so that's what that impression up bid does. And then finally, if you have 0 orders and your click limit is, or your number of clicks is less than the click limit, then you're just going to keep the bid the same. All right, so that makes sense. Now we start talking about our converting targets. So up until now, we've just talked about our 0 converting targets because the orders here are 0, right? So now we've got a couple different things. We've got a high ACoS, we've got a target ACoS, and we've got a mid ACoS. All right, so for this first example, this number 3 in red, we've got a higher ACoS. So in this case, this row here, the current ACoS of the target, which is 52%, or is greater or equal to our high ACoS setting, which is 25% in this case, which is right there. Then you're going to take your target ACoS, which is 25%, and divide it by the ACoS of that target, which is 52%. So if you do that, and then you multiply that by the cost per click, which in this case is $2.05, then you're going to get a bid of 99 cents. Okay, so I'm just going to confirm that with the calculator here. So you're going to do, and this is what I'd recommend you do as well, take out your calculator just to run through the calculation so you can start to learn where all these values come from. So I'm going to do target ACoS, I'm going to do 0.25, I'm going to do divided by, I'm going to do 0.52, and then I'm going to multiply that by the actual cost per click, which right now is $2.05, and I get 0.98, which you round up, 0.985 round ups to 0.99. And the reason you have this dash 149 is you've also got a 50% percentage top of search modifier on there. So that's kind of your upper range. And you can see there's also a variable bid strategy that comes into play, but I will typically usually run dynamic down only, or every once in a while fixed bids, but very rarely I'll run this up down type deal. All right, so that is that example. For number 4 here, you can see we've actually got a good ACoS of 15%, and that's going to fall under our mid ACoS setting. So right now for this row, we've got a mid ACoS of 25%, 15 is less than 25. So we're moving down here. You can see at this point for the Apex formula, you actually have a new parameter called CPC mode. And this is a way to kind of refine the Apex formula even further, and it's done by this checkbox up here. So if you have it off, it's actually going to revert to the current bid. Okay, so if it's off, then it's going to be the current bid you see there versus the cost per click if you have it on. So usually the cost per click is going to be less than the current bid. That's why it's a little bit more conservative if you use the cost per click mode. So right now you can see I have the cost per click mode off, and let's just look at our inputs here. So we've got the cost per click on this one because we're looking at this criteria here where our ACoS of 15% is less than 25%. We're going to take our cost per click of, let's see, 70 cents. So 70 cents is right there. And keep in mind, we have it off right now, so I'm kind of doing both of these examples at the same time. So CPC mode on, you would use your cost per click, which is 0.7. I've got my calculator here, times the up bid percentage, which is 10%. So I'm going to times that by 1.1, and I'd get 77. Now, this is not 77, it's 95 because I have this off. Okay, so let me do the current bid, which is 86, which we see right here, 0.86 times 1.1 is 95. So that's where that comes from. Now, let's turn this on and let's look at this now. I just hit the bid preview button there. You can see now it's 0.78, 0.77 rounded up to 0.78. All right, so that's right there. And you've got your 20% modifier. That's why you've got the range. So hopefully that's making sense. Our last example here is when you set a span here. So you can see 25 to 30%, and the ACoS falls within that of 26%. Then the bid's just going to stay the same. So it gets ignored, any of the ratio calculations. So with this Apex formula, you can essentially set up obviously more aggressive parameters as you segment things out further, but it also allows you just to almost iteratively optimize all of your bids based on a logical criteria that is just built into the formula. So as targets start to get impressions, you're going to start to bid a little bit more until they get a conversion. You can set it up to start bidding more aggressively if the target or if the ACoS is favorable or it's not favorable, the bid will start decreasing. So over time, ideally, you're going to start having certain targets rise to the top and bidding more aggressive where the other ones will fall and keep your ACoS in check. So it's never going to be, again, a perfect science. You are going to have to use your own mind to look for patterns and just try to strategize around what's working well. You'll see in some future videos some other auditing tools and some really slick stuff that we have that can help you get there faster. But getting the fundamentals here and just kind of understanding at its core what's going on will really help you in the long run. So that is the Apex formula. Now I do want to cover the other one, so I'm going to pause it here and get another screenshot, and then we'll start talking about the revenue per click times target ACoS formulas. But it's going to be a lot of the same type of thing. It's just a bit of a different formula, so I'll see you in a second. All right, so now instead of the ACoS formula, I've got the revenue per click times target ACoS, and this is a very popular formula in a lot of the SaaS tools they use as kind of the root bid adjustment. And essentially what you're going to do in AdTactix, if you want to use the revenue per click times target ACoS, is let's go ahead for the sake of this training and say you need to click the correct formula here that you plan to use, and it'll just make things a little simpler. All right, so I'm going to click that. I'm going to go up now and go to optimize bids. And before I actually get into the bid override table, I'm going to click this change bid setting layout. And this just runs a really quick script that formats your bid override table. All right, and all it has done here is hide a couple fields. So actually this is cut off a little bit, but you can see it hid a couple fields here in red that were just for the Apex formula. So these other ones are that are left over get used in the revenue per click times target ACoS. All right, and what you'll do here is very similar. So you've just got a different formula. If there's no orders and the clicks are greater or equal to the click limit, so your click limit again here is 10. So we've got this one is greater. So you're going to do the current bid times the reduction. So very similar, I think it's the exact same as the Apex until you get actually to the ratio calculation. So let's actually just hop right down there. So the only difference in this one is going to be if your ACoS is greater than 0, which means you have an order. So in this case, all of these are going to get handled the same, where in the Apex formula, it was segmented further and allowed you more control, where in this one, it's literally just going to take our revenue, which is our sales. So you've got, here, these values here, divided by our clicks, which are here, and multiply it by our target ACoS, which is here. Okay, and you've also got some kind of lower floors and ceilings that if the calculation says it should be greater than $2, it's not going to let you do that just because you've got that set. So you'd have to adjust this higher if you wanted to give it more room. But anyway, in this case, let's go ahead and now that we've changed that in our settings tab, now that when we hit this bid preview, you'll see that the values will change. So now we're getting 68, 115, 99. So again, I can take our sales of 2,000. So I can take 2113 divided by our clicks of 934, multiplied by our target ACOS, which in this case is 30. And I'm going to get 0.678. So that's where you're getting the 0.68 from. All right, and likewise, that's where the 115 comes from, and that's where the 0.99 comes from. So revenue per click times target ACOS, all of the converting targets are going to use that formula. Not as much segmentation, you'll get more bid swings, but it is useful to test. And the nice thing about AdTactix is you can test any of these, and it's not really going to hurt anything. The only thing is you just want to make sure before you upload your final file, it's set to the way you want. So you pick a formula, you can always look at what the values are giving you and decide on which one you want to move forward with. And as long as you finalize things before you create your upload file, that's what's going to be included when you actually run through this optimization script, which we covered there in the last quick start video. So literally all you do is once you have the bid input settings on the bid override table specified, you just click your algorithm you want to use, and then it adjusts your bids for you. All right, so that is the revenue per click times target ACOS. I'm going to go grab the second style of the revenue per click formula, and we'll just briefly discuss that one. All right, so for this one, you can see the first three rows are exactly the same in the formula. The only difference now is we're doing our revenue per click times target ACOS, and then we're going to multiply that by our current bid divided by our cost per click. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just so our new bid preview works, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to change this to revenue per click times target ACOS for this one. And now when I go back here and let's just do one example. All right, so you've got our ACOS is greater than 0, meaning there's an order. So we'll just use the same one. You're going to do revenue per click. So you've got revenue of 2113 divided by our clicks of 934 times 0.3. It's our target ACOS. You get 0.678, which that's what we had last time. So that's 0.68. And now we're going to multiply that. We've got our current bid of 0.65 divided by our cost per click of 0.59. That equals 1.1, and we're going to multiply that now by our 0.68. That gives us 0.749. All right, so if we do bid preview, we should get to 0.749. There you go, 0.75. So it rounds up to 0.75. So that's an example of how this formula works. And again, anything with a conversion is going to get that same row down there of the optimized bid. Again, not as segmented out and controllable as the Apex formula, but it's a very popular one and does produce good results nonetheless. All right, so one other thing I wanted to just kind of drive home here, because I do have an example of target, campaign, portfolio, ASINs, all of these in one spot, is if you see this purple, this means that we've got a campaign level override that's a multi-keyword campaign. And in this case, it's got the targets here are also included in this campaign. So if we actually expand this out, you'll see that defensive branded shows up right here and right here. So those are all in the same campaign. But because we have targets on here, and you can see there's 3 keywords in this, so there's one other keyword that's not on here. Because we have the target level overrides, these are the parameters that are going to get used for the target level overrides, and then these are the parameters that are going to get used for anything else or any of the other targets in that campaign that aren't on here's target level overrides. So hopefully that point makes sense. And what I can do is you could, if you delete, say this one here, just right click on it and delete, then the only one now governed by this criteria here is this single target, and then the other 2 that are in here are now governed by the criteria here. So hopefully that makes sense. It's a bit confusing if you haven't used this type of table in the past, but hopefully after studying this video you'll understand that a little bit better. And then likewise, if you've got your ASIN criteria specified or a portfolio specified, if there isn't a higher level override that uses the targets within these portfolios or higher grouped ASINs, then that would be the criteria that it falls back to. And then same principle all the way back down to the account level. All right, so that is that. I've got one more formula to cover, and it's by far the most advanced, so I will be right back after I set that one up. Alrighty, so this last one is something I learned from Mina Elias, one of his YouTube videos. He covers something like this, and I thought it was just a really interesting way to modify your bids on you do use a shorter date range, so like 7-day, and it's kind of a rolling range because you always want to kind of keep a pulse on the current ad landscape, how your competitors are bidding. And the idea of this method is it increments your bids based on a fixed small amount. So 3 cents plus 5 cents, depending on which kind of ACoS thresholds, or there's some click thresholds that your parameters may fall under. So to set this one up, you just go back again to your settings tab, and we're going to adjust this now to iterative. Iterative. And then you're going to, likewise, we did before, change bid setting layout. And I'm going to hit yes. All right, so after I do that, you'll see a brand new section kind of popped out here on the right, and the ratio-based bid formulas got hidden. So we've told the system now we want to use the iterative method, and I've actually went ahead and assigned some default bid settings here, and this one's a lot more involved. I actually learned from Mina Elias. He's got a pretty good YouTube video out there where he explains this, so I thought it was a really unique way to manage your bids, and it makes a lot of sense in certain situations. So to cover this, I'm going to just again go through some examples here of the different scenarios and show you how the parameters kind of work in combination with the logic down here. So first off, you've got the floor and ceiling settings, so those are just right here and right here, so you just want to make sure you have that set accordingly. The zero conversion logic it's got click logic and impression logic built into it. So this first line, if your orders are 0 and your clicks are less than what he calls a click ignore value, so in this case we've got one right here of 3, so you've got the row right here. No orders, the click ignore value is 3, and we're less than that one, and the impression limit is greater than, or I'm sorry, the current impressions is greater than the impression limit. Actually, it doesn't look like I have, I don't have an example of this one. Let me fake it. So in this case, if we had impressions greater, so that would be like 350 here. All right. So now we've got the clicks are less than the click limit because we've got 2. All right. And the impressions are greater than the impression limit. So we're getting impressions, but we're not getting clicks, and we just keep it the current bid. So the current bid is 20 cents. If I hit this now, this 21 should change to 20. All right, so there you go, 20. So that's how that works. All right, if that condition's not met, then you've got these 3 click thresholds. So that's where the blue, the 1, 2, and 3, those are your actual thresholds. It just means 4 clicks, 6 clicks, 9 clicks. And if you hover over here, it tells you if the clicks are greater than this value without a conversion, then you take the current CPC and you subtract the click down value, which in this case, the click down value is just the adjacent one here, and it must be a positive number. So the click down value is 5 cents. So you can see down here for the click threshold 1, if your clicks are greater than click threshold 1, so let's find one here. We've got a 4. Let's see if this one works out. So we've got a 4 is, it's not greater than, let me cheat it. Let me just say that's 5. Greater than 4, and your clicks are less than or equal to the click threshold 2, which in this case we are, because we're between 4 and 6. then you're going to take the current cost per click, not the current bid, the current cost per click, and subtract 5 cents. So our current cost per click is 172. So if we do a subtraction right now, what should that be? 167. There you go, 167. All right. Likewise, the other ranges here work the same way until you get to the greater than. So greater than 9 clicks without a conversion, you're going to do just the current cost per click minus this 15 cents. So I don't have an example. Actually, this first one. So that's where 70 minus 55, or 15, you get 55. All right, next in the formula is the impression logic. So again, we still don't have any conversions, but let's use this line here as an example. Our click limit logic is not satisfied because we've got 2 clicks, which this part is, the clicks are less than the click ignore limit, but our impressions are not high enough. So we've got 65 impressions here, and our impression limit's 400. So we're just not getting enough eyeballs. So in order to increase the bid there, because this first line isn't met, then we end up jumping down to this one here, where your impressions are 65, which are less than our 400. So we're going to take our current bid of 20 cents, and we're going to increase that by the impression up bid parameter, which in this case is 30 cents, and that's where you get the 50 cents. All right, so that's that example. Now the rest of these are just related to targets with conversions. So you've got a series of ACoS threshold ranges and then fixed increments of either increases or decreases. Once your ACoS gets so high, you can start adding a negative and decreasing it by a fixed amount. All right, so just to do one example here, let's take the 52%. So let's take this one here, and then we go find the range where 52 is met. So there's 55. So essentially between 40 and 55, you're going to decrease your ACoS by 5 cents. And the one thing you have to know about this formula that's a bit tricky is if you see here in each of these rows where it says, let's see, so this is 55, it's between 6 and 7. So it's going to be right here. So it's saying if you have orders and your ACoS is greater than the 6 threshold and less than the 7 threshold, and then you're going to take your ACoS adjustment number 7, and you're going to say if that's less than 0, so if it's negative, then you're going to take the smaller of the current cost per click or the current bid. Max bid is the same thing as the current bid. So you take whichever smaller, and if it's negative, you're going to use that. If it's positive, you're going to use the current cost per click. So it's not going to factor in the current bid. So it's a bit tricky. It can either use the current bid or the CPC, depending on if it's a negative or an increase. So in this case, we've got I believe it was a decrease. Yeah, 52. So let me highlight this again. So you got a negative. So our negatives are going to be the smaller of the cost per click or max bid. So in this case, cost per click is 205. And our current bid is 2. So it's going to take $2 minus 5 cents, and that's where you get the 1.95. And then your range here is from the placement modifier of 50%. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. All the rest of them are used the same way. It's just dependent on which ACoS range each one fits in. And then with each update sequence, then you're just going to be using the rolling 5 to 7 day range data and make these micro adjustments to kind of chase around the right placements and bids compared to your competitors. And it's a bit of a different principle than the ratio based bid inputs, but tends to work well, especially in niches like supplements. You do get a lot higher spend, though, I've noticed in testing this for myself, than you do with the Apex or some of the ratio-based bid formulas. So definitely test it and just see which works well for you. One other thing I'll mention in this video is, we've got 4 formulas right now. There's a lot of other popular ones, and it's very easy to add new ones into AdTactix. So if you're watching this and you do have a complex formula that we could integrate and whatever parameters that it's based on, I'm sure we can work it in. So if you've seen success with something that is not currently integrated and you'd like it to be, definitely reach out to support and we can make that happen. All right, and then just lastly to finish up, one thing that a lot of users get tripped up on is they run through a few calculations and they kind of get the gist, but when they start thinking about the grouping of additional targets, they get a little tripped up thinking that potentially all of the keywords in, say, a portfolio are going to get changed to, one value or something like that. And you can do that. That function is actually handled through this blue column. But if you don't use this blue column and you set the iterative, revenue per click or Apex, there's all the different formulas, but they all function the same way. If it's a grouped style override, which I consider those campaign, portfolio, or ASIN style, then it's going to use these inputs in conjunction with the target level metrics of all of the targets independently within these groups to calculate target level bids. So each target within these groups are getting optimized based on their specific parameters, not the parameters of if the campaign. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, guys, so this was by far the most kind of in-depth formula video that I've done. Hopefully it's pretty straightforward and you can follow some of the calculations. Again, I just recommend setting up one of the formulas from the start and then using this new bid preview button and running through some examples to where you really understand kind of what's going on and where the optimization calculations are coming from. That way, if you do have any questions as you're creating your final upload files, you can go back and trace back to where the bids are originating from. So I will see you guys on the next training video. Thanks.